So I shelved it, and granted, I was also in no position to really try to do something like this. I was in college, I was living in my parents' house, I didn't own a car. There were lots of things against me for kind of doing a big project like this. So in the intervening years, I didn't let go of Mouse Guard, even though I had shelved it. I liked the concept, I thought it had something. And I just kept drawing and sketching the characters when I had the time. And the style kind of evolved when I started learning to draw like myself and not trying to imitate other people. Those first drawings that I showed were based on the illustrations of a Michigan illustrator named Tom Fort. And actually the top panel there is very Tom Fort inspired, but I just had to loosen up and try to draw like myself. The guy yawning all the way to the left is Jeremy. He's so bored. So this is the Motor City Comic Convention. Jeremy actually kind of brought me into the world of comics. I was in college thinking, because my artwork doesn't look like what I see in comics, I'll probably end up finding work easier doing children's book illustrations. And I was out of college and building a portfolio of children's book illustrations by making children's books, little short children's books for family as gifts. And Jeremy worked at the art supply store where I shopped. And we were about the same age, and he said, well, get an art group together, let's draw in the evenings. So we started doing that, and then Jeremy said, you should come to the Motor City Comic Convention. I was like, I don't have a comic book. How could I set up the comic convention? He's like, well, I don't have a book, and I've been setting up for 3 years. All right, man, let's go. So after my first Motor City Comic Convention, I decided to do Mouse Guard as a comic and just get it out, just do it, dive in. This was the convention where I released the first issue of Mouse Guard, and the gentleman, oh, sorry, that's okay. The other gentleman there who's sitting there, also not looking as enthusiastic as I am, is the real-life inspiration for the character Kenny. He was best man at my wedding, and we met in Boy Scouts. And he and I are Saxon and Kenzie, very clearly. The first issue was a self-published black and white that I did through a print-on-demand service called Comixpress. I had absolutely no idea how to make a comic, other than the fact that I had read lots of comics, and I knew how to draw to some regard, but how do you tell a story over the course of 23 pages or 24 pages? And that drawing group that Jeremy and I were a part of just made a big difference. Jeremy was working on a book at the time, and every week we'd get together and kind of compare notes, show what we had done over the last week, how far we had gotten, what things were working for us, where we were struggling, and somehow I muddled through and got a comic ready for that Motor City. I then took that issue to San Diego. I wasn't going there to set up or anything. I was going there just like you guys to wander around, meet my heroes, get signatures, all that kind of stuff. Because I knew there was going to be some online, or some people I knew solely from online. I brought some copies of Mouse Guard to make sure digital friends of mine had copies. And someone suggested I should go talk to Archaea. I was like, I don't know who Archaea is. What's Archaea? Because at that point, Archaea was pretty much in existence to publish Mark Smiley's book. Mark Smiley started the company so he could publish his own book. But right at that time, Archaea was opening its doors to other creators. The gentleman who suggested it to me said, Archaea is looking for unusual fantasy. Well, Mouse Guard qualifies there. So I showed it to Mark at San Diego, and he said, let's publish this. And by the time I got home from San Diego, I had a contract. It's been collected in some major volumes. Fall is the first, which is Fall, Winter, the next one, and most recently, The Black Axe. The Black Axe is a prequel that takes place before Fall and Winter and tells kind of it tells the story of a character named Kellenon who's visited by his last of kin to take him overseas on a journey to find the mythic Black Axe, which is being held by a ferret king who gives Kellenon the task of taking down a fox. And then ultimately, as all journeys do, they have to come to an end, and the characters have to come home. And sometimes that's harder than the task that was in front of them at the beginning. And when Kellenon gets home, he finds out that the weight of the Black Axe was much bigger than he thought. With the Black Axe, I did a lot of extras in the hardcover. There are a lot of different locations that the characters went to. So I did cutaways and guides of those places to really enrich your experience of where these are. 'Cause, you know, in the comic panel, you only see in the background and everything. And I worked to develop them so they felt real. And I know that you guys eat that stuff up, so I wanted to give it to you. This is some more of that. And more lore and history. Normally in a hardcover of Mouse Guard, there's, I think, 8 pages of extras, and in Black Axe there's 22. So it took a long time for me to get that book done, and at the end I just felt like I had to give you guys a reward for waiting. So the world building stuff that I alluded to is really important to me. Mouse Guard's kind of a silly premise. It's mice with swords, walking on their hind legs, talking, and then beating animals that they could never even run away from in the wild. It's really silly. And it's really easy for that to become silly. And if I drew it differently, it would, you know, you wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't care. When Liam is being, when a little character like Liam is being shown down by a snake, you would either say, I'm not worried because he's going to squash and stretch, or he's going to pull out a mallet and bonk the snake or something. He's going to paint a hole on the rock and the snake's going to go for it. You know, it's going to be a Looney Tune. Or you're just like, so what? He's not even real. He's not a real character. So I wanted to get as much realness as I could because I have to draw those, you know, I have to draw a mouse standing up. I already have to kind of bend anatomy, so I can only make a mouse look as real as I can in that context. That means everything else I have to make as real as possible. And that's where I get into the world building. So I try to do things like show how they would record history through stained glass, or, and then the sets, I do models to try to make sure that, I'm drawing things accurately over and over, if I have to draw a setting. Also, so it just makes sense. If I drew something, if I had a boat to draw, for instance, I just sat down and looked at a blank sheet of paper and went, okay, now it's time to draw a boat. Even best case scenario where I just nail that drawing. Sorry, guys. Even if I nailed that drawing right away, I would have one drawing of that boat from one vantage point. I wouldn't know necessarily how the rudder acts, or how the mast connects to the deck, or whatever. I'd have to do a whole series of drawings. And that's also assuming that every one of those drawings I nail first time. And that doesn't happen. So I find that if I just start building a model, I can design the whole thing in 3 dimensions all at once and practically make no mistakes. I've scrapped one model in my history of doing Mouse Guard, like partway through, where I just went, this isn't working. I make them modular so that I can move them around. I don't have to build a whole city or a whole room. I can just build part of it and then reference it. This is a good example of one where I had to do an entire city, and it's kind of a sprawling interior, almost like Covent Garden or indoor mall kind of a place. And those walls, did I have a shot that's modular? Okay. Those walls, you can kind of see the seam down the middle. Each side of those walls come off, and then can be rotated to come closer to us, or to go out left and right.